Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 82 of the MTB Podcast, presented and hosted by Worldwide Cyclery. This is Jeff, and
I'm Liam.
And this episode's topics, we are going to cover interesting things from Shimano, including their new link glide drivetrains and their recent patent related to wireless electronic shifting / dropper post / suspension.
We're going to look into Forestal Bikes and what they recently launched, as well as the general common state of e-bikes in North America from our perspective.
And give you guys the 101 on some of our recent YouTube videos, which include rear shock upgrades, the new fork from RockShox, and new product from Fox. Oh, and BERD spokes.
BERD spokes, as well as finish off with some listener questions that you guys submitted to us.
Yep, so let's dive into it. But first, a sound effect from our very own DJ Pineapple. Shimano. New things from Shimano. Starting off with their link glide drivetrains.
Yes.
What do you think?
There's a new 1x10 Dior drivetrain and a new 1x11 XT drivetrain. With some bold claims to be 300% more durable than previous versions.
Yeah, I'm confused because I never really thought that there was a durability problem to begin with. But some people have that issue, and then there's also e-bikes, which they didn't say at all. It doesn't seem like that these are quote-unquote made for e-bikes, but it kind of seems like it would make sense for an e-bike since that's where drivetrain durability is more of an issue.
Yeah, it's definitely leaning towards that, especially because it seems like weight is not really in the equation here.
Yeah, this stuff's heavy. It's either a 10-speed Dior or an 11-speed XT and derailleur, cassette, shifter, and it is not light. It's heavy. Yeah,
so it seems like it's great. Oh, it does say, some e-bike stuff down there.
Okay.
But yeah, it seems like, it could work really well for e-bikes, especially because, e-bikers tend to just hop on and go, especially some of the newer ones to the mountain bike scene.
Yeah. I mean, people might get offended at that comment. Are you saying all e-bikers are novices?
No, I'm saying the newer ones just hop on and go, and they just rip their bike.
I completely agree. I'm just playing devil's advocate. Yeah, that's true. I mean, depending on where you're at in terms of your skill set in the mountain bike scene, knowing how to shift properly and not shift under load, that's definitely your mentality changes on that a lot the more you ride bikes and the longer you've been around and the more chains you've accidentally broken because you shifted incorrectly.
Yeah, that and just your maintenance on bikes in general tends to improve as you ride longer and longer.
Yep.
It's a learning curve. So these, I mean, if they're going to be stronger and last longer, I'm sure there's a market for that. Especially with everything kind of getting so light and so, I don't want to say fragile, but it's kind of brought to the limit. Like 1x12 is very close to the limit of what a chained drivetrain can be at. So,
yeah, I think there was that famous quote, I believe from Keith Bontrager, that was cheap, light, strong, pick two. Which is actually really smart. And when it comes to mountain bike components, it's very, very true. And yeah, it's cool to just see more options. I mean, this to me seems like it's geared towards e-bikes, although it's not like explicitly called an e-bike something. Like, sure, I mean, you could use it on a normal bike, but it's cool. I mean, if you're a rider, whether you're on an e-bike or not, if you are having issues with breaking chains or knocking teeth off your cassette for various reasons, this could be a good product for you. I did see actually a comment the other day about that. Like, hey, I break teeth off of my cassette all the time. And I was like, oh, that's odd, but I don't know. But I guess it happens. I'm not a Clydesdale, so I wouldn't know.
I mean, I've seen it happen, but it's more just a rare scenario. Mm-hmm. But yeah, new drivetrain from Shimano.
Yeah.
More durable.
When it will be available, nobody knows. So don't hold your breath. That's just the bike industry in 2021. It's things are lost in translation when it comes to supply chains and all of that. So we'll see. It'll come out at some point. The next cool thing from Shimano is their recently granted patent related to wireless electronic shifting, dropper post, suspension. This is really hard to digest. You can, the original patent documents can be found out there. A number of mountain bike media outlets reported on this with some of the images found in that, and it's kind of complicated. To me, it seemed like it was more related to potentially your dropper. Like, this was some of my assumptions and takeaways from this confusing patent thing, like your dropper post height being related to how your suspension is behaving. For example, if your dropper post is up, your suspension is firm, and if it's down, your suspension is open. If that's how it works, and that does work, like, that's a cool idea. I never thought of that.
Yeah, it definitely is hard to know if that's what they're going after, because it's a very vague patent and hard to kind of dissect that. But yeah, that's kind of what it seems to do, and it has to involve the dropper post, suspension, and an electronic drivetrain, and it's all wireless. So all of that is new from Shimano. So either way, whether it does work like that or they're just getting wireless components, lockouts, dropper post, and drivetrain, it's all new.
Yeah, true. And I mean, I think, these things are so hard to look at because there's so much going on at these big brands like Shimano and Fox and SRAM. There's all this product development constantly happening. They're constantly filing patents for new things they might make, might not make, or maybe just want to protect from not having their competitor make. So it's just a big ball of wax behind the scenes. I think a bicycle retailer once reported that there was something like, several $1 million that each Fox and SRAM spent on patent lawsuits, just fighting each other over patent, every year. Yeah. It just seems crazy. Why can't they just get along? I mean, I have no idea, but I guess they're competitors. They're making components. So it is hard to take any true takeaways from this and what's going to happen. But, SRAM has multiple amazing wireless electronic drivetrains right now and a wireless electronic dropper post. And Shimano doesn't quite have an answer when it comes to this electronic stuff, especially not wireless. That's competitive. In my opinion. So who knows? I mean, I would bet they're probably itching at the door to be like, let's make something good and compete there.
Yeah, definitely. They've been behind the game for a while. They're the first to the electric drivetrain market in mountain bikes and road, but it's always been cabled with wires. So it's not been wireless. They don't have a wireless version of anything yet. So Shimano, if they can get there, they can, catch up to SRAM, but either way,
we will see.
I would like to see an electronic suspension lockout.
Yeah,
I think
kind of
really
like Fox
cool.
Live Valve, right?
But completely manual.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Completely under my own want to lock it out.
I really think that this possible idea of it being related to your dropper post is pretty smart. Because think about it. When I first thought of that, I was like, when do you ever have your dropper post up that you would want your suspension fully open?
I wouldn't say fully open there, but tech climbs, you don't want it locked out fully.
Yeah.
So,
but in my head, the perfect setup would be if your dropper post is up, you're in sort of a climb mode,
firm.
So where you're just in a firm mode,
Yeah.
exactly, and your dropper post is down and it's open.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty nice.
Yeah, it's kind of similar-ish to the way Scott's twin lock suspension works.
Yeah,
where
that's true.
You're locked out in the middle and you're basically limited to about half travel or so. Mm-hmm. My last XC race bike had that, and that middle mode is actually really nice for just pedaling over really rough braking bumps or tech climbing.
Yep.
Hit a full lockout for road climbs and then full open for descents. So
yeah,
something like that on the electronic wireless would be really cool.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, we will see. Time will tell. We're definitely splitting hairs and making negligible performance gains in mountain bikes that already work really, really well. So yeah, we will see what all of these brands that are kind of responsible for product innovation come up with over the next decade to make bikes any better when they already work so darn well. But there we go.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Are you tired of carrying toilet paper on your trail for number 2 blowouts? Does your morning coffee leave you pinching your cheeks until you make it to the gas station? Well, friends, discomfort no more. My name's Billy, and I'm the founder and CPO of Billy's Bicycle Bidet. I've brought to market 2 bicycle bidets to soothe your hole, Squirt 1.0 and Squirt Mini. Squirt 1.0 is a fully electronic 3-cylinder, 8 horsepower dingleberry blasting machine. Squirt Mini takes all the engineering of Squirt 1.0, but easy and conveniently screws on to your water bottle for trail side relief. Pick up your Squirt 1.0 for $49.99 and your Squirt Mini for $29.99. Or for a limited time only, get both the 1.0 and the Mini for 14 easy payments of $9.99. You do the math. Visit squirtdingleberryblaster.com. Bye. My name's Billy.
And now, back to the show.
Forestal Bikes. What about them, Liam?
They're new. They just officially launched with 3 models, and all 3 models are e-bikes.
Yeah, so it's an e-bike brand exclusively as of now. Right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, high-end stuff. The brand is from Andorra, which is a landlocked country in between Spain and France that has tons of mountains, a mountain bike World Cup stop. It's also the home of Commensal Bikes, as far as I know. And yeah, Forestal, man. This is some pretty fancy stuff. Slight caveat to this story, we've been talking to Forestal to potentially be dealers for them, so we might be slightly biased to saying that they're nice, but they do look nice. But also, we've never ridden them, so
Yeah.
jury's still out quite a little bit there.
Yeah, they do look nice. They kind of slot, all their models slot a bit between like the Specialized Levo SL and the full-powered e-bikes that kind of most everyone else has.
Yeah, which means they don't have like a huge motor, but they don't have a tiny motor, right?
Yeah, so from what I was looking at, their claimed wattage is very similar to a Levo SL, but their torque is almost doubled, meaning that on a steep climb, you'll be more torque and have more initial like power, like a full-powered, but you won't quite be like ripping along, 30 miles an hour or whatever. So
Yeah.
that's what I understand from it.
All right. And they're going to be doing their own motor and their own battery, all proprietary stuff they design themselves.
Correct. Yeah, it's their own design. So we don't exactly know yet on that, but it's their own design, and it's also how they could get their bikes at a light weight for this power to torque ratio. And everything with that. So yeah, it's cool to see, I was kind of not quick to jump on the e-bike train, mostly because I thought the first couple generations of e-bikes were really crude.
Yeah.
And just not
were.
quite developed to what they could have been. I don't think anyone up until the last couple of years, even the last like year cycle, really looked at an e-bike and went, we should put a motor on this bike and make it look good and make it ride good and have it be like a really good package as a whole. They kind of like slapped a motor on it and we're like, yeah, this thing helps you get to the top of the hill.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like they definitely didn't look appealing or just pretty by any means. They looked kind of more homemade and clunky, and I don't know. They just weren't evolved. And like even in the last couple of years, I mean, it's happening really fast. More and more brands that make e-bikes are just making them look better, work better, fine-tuning everything about them. And yeah, the whole segment of e-bikes is definitely evolving quickly and becoming way more popular.
Yeah.
I'm seeing them so much more often out on the trails now. It's wild.
definitely. So yeah, Forestal Bikes, they have 3 models. Try not to totally butcher these names. They have the Scion, CYON, which is a 150 mil bike. So it's kind of their trail bike. They have the Sirion, I believe it's called, which is their kind of what they first initially launched with. They had the first edition, but now they've launched their full range of models with build kits and colors and everything of that bike, which is 170 mil travel. And then they also have the Hydra, which I believe is a modified Sirion that is 180 front with a dual crown and 170 rear. And they have 2 build kits of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, those are all pretty long travel. But I guess if you have a motor, why not just have some extra travel? I mean, there's so many schools of thought on this one.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm sure they're coming out, it sounds like they're going to be a full e-bike brand, so I'm sure they're going to come out with some even smaller travel bikes. I think in Europe, the market is way more developed than it is in the US. So
absolutely.
they probably have a better pulse on that. But yeah, for the US, it's kind of makes a lot of sense, especially like anything on the West Coast that I'm aware of is like long climbs, long descents.
Yep.
What's the point of, short travel when you're going to be going downhill for a while? You want help getting up that big climb, and you want to go down just as good as you could on any other bike.
Yep. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, I mean, in speaking of what their bikes are sort of made for and capable of, the famed longtime downhill racer Cedric Gracia, how long has he been on Forestal now? He's been like working with them on their development, and he was a longtime Santa Cruz rider. Then he went to Forestal before they were even like released. It was like this hidden secretive bike he was riding. His Instagram's cool. He shreds those things all the time if you're curious about that. There's also some pretty cool YouTube videos by Forestal with Cedric that just like show him riding these bikes. And I don't know, interesting stuff to just see sort of the quality of these bikes, what they can do. I mean, e-bikes are really coming a long way, and people are riding them like total maniacs, like they've been riding normal bikes for the longest time. So yeah, it's interesting stuff. I mean, I definitely want to roll this into just the general commentary on the state of e-bikes in North America from our perspective. So I mean, our perspective as like longtime mountain bikers that live in the high-end segment of the world, e-bikes have it very much to me reminds me of 29-inch wheels, and when 29-inch wheels were coming out, there was just this school of thought of like, oh, those are lame, man. Those are stupid. We don't need those. 26 for life. And as everyone knows now, that most people don't say that anymore. And that's people ride 29ers. And 27.5 is a thing, but I don't know. It just takes time.
Though, it did take a while to figure out the 29 Geo.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it took a while to get that mid-travel, big travel, downhill bike even to ride how you kind of expect it to. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the same thing with e-bikes.
Yeah. The original ones were just not comparable to like the quality of regular non-e-bikes at the time, but now they're becoming comparable when it comes to geo and ability and function and form and all of that sort of stuff, which is and I think that is what's making them more accepted. But it's been funny, we have a lot of in common friends and customers that seemingly would have never had an e-bike, maybe 5 years ago, and now almost all of them have e-bikes.
Yeah. My riding group is so penetrated with the e-bike market that I can barely get them to ride normal bikes with me at this point. So they also have done the iteration jumps from the kind of crude first bikes and then the Levos. And then a lot of them hopped on that Mondraker when they became available, because that was kind of one of the first ones that had good integration and motor and looked good and rode well with a unique suspension design. And now almost all of them are on a Santa Cruz Bullet. So if for those of you that don't know, I believe that's a 170 mil bike, maybe 170, 160, 180, 170. It's a long travel bike, spec'd as a mullet, and all of them are now finally going completely faster downhill on that Bullet than they were on their downhill bikes or their enduro bikes, and they're saying it's the best downhill riding e-bike they've ever had. So
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's still funny to me just watching people's mentality on e-bikes in general change as e-bikes get better, and as usually what does it is they try a good one.
Yeah.
It's like they're like, I don't really care for e-bikes, I'm not interested, and then all of a sudden they rode their buddy's Levo and they're like, I think I'm gonna buy an e-bike. That to me is a little bit comical, but I don't know. For me, it's an e-bike. It's if people are getting out there and having fun and enjoying themselves and being responsible, respectful, nice mountain bikers or cyclists or whatever, great. Ride bikes. But it's ironic because there is still there's just hate, man. There's just arguments. Even this. Article that Pink Bike posted about Forestal. I mean, Pink Bike to me is always a funny place to go read comments. I think everyone would agree with that. And this article about Forestal, there's so many various comments. There's people literally just viciously arguing with each other about about e-bikes, like why they're stupid or why they're good or why you might need one when you inevitably become older. Like there's just all this banter and shit talking, and it's just, I don't know. It's still kind of funny and weird, and then there's like a lot of trail systems that still have no e-bikes allowed, and so like that's a little bit of an issue, but it's also controversial.
So I was just in Sedona, which is pretty strongly no e-bikes, enforced by the rangers and such, as well as local mountain bikers aren't into it. But from what I understood, it's the reason because back in the 90s or so, when mountain biking was getting really popular there, all the hikers had a fit and wanted to ban mountain biking. Well, they came to an agreement that said, okay, no motorized vehicles, and mountain bikers were like, sure, that doesn't exist. We're going to agree to that. And then all of a sudden now...
Yeah, because it was like dirt bikes and motorcycles, like sharing the trails with bicycles, with hikers, with equestrians, and...
Yeah. So now it was just a mountain bike that was fully self-powered. Now there's these e-bikes, and they fall into this motorized category, which is still also a gray area.
Yeah, because it's like, does it have a throttle, but it's just assisted, and
yeah. So that's all got to get figured out on trail networks. But so Sedona's still categorized as no e-bikes, and now its signage is everywhere at every marked trailhead, no e-bikes. So depending on where you're at too, it could be controversial whether you can ride an e-bike on your local trail network.
Yeah.
And such.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. All that stuff's funny because I've been out. I mean, even just recently, I was riding and climbing up a pretty challenging uphill, and an e-bike just like blitzed past me uphill. Someone who was visibly not as in good of shape as I am. not to brag, but I don't know. So, and for a second I was like a little angry, but then I was like, whatever. Like it doesn't, and I can also, and it's also kind of like it spooks you, right? Like if you're climbing, you don't expect someone on a bike to blitz past you from behind, like period.
Yeah.
And that actually is the same way because I do a lot of hiking too and trail running, and like if I'm hiking or trail running and a mountain biker just like sneaks up behind me real fast on a downhill or whatever, like it can spook you, and that like instantly kind of creates this like like you kind of pissed off real quick,
Yeah.
And people get mad about that, and I don't know. So I feel I like try to empathize with all the various sides on the whole topic, but I don't know. It's just interesting. I mean, it seems like in Europe, from what we hear, we obviously haven't spent very much time in Europe recently because no one's been doing much international travel these days for obvious reasons. But it seems like it's way more evolved in Europe. They're more common. They're more accepted. From everything we hear, they're just, I don't know. It's just further along the path. More people are using them for not just mountain biking, but especially just commuting and general bikes and stuff.
Yeah.
Which is more popular in general in Europe than it is in the U.S.
Exactly. So Europe's got more figured out. And back to the trail thing, I think also a concern, which I don't think it's a huge concern, but maybe something to think about too, is it could cause more trail collisions.
Yeah, that's true.
Someone going uphill faster than you would expect them to, you going downhill on the same trail, kind of hard to control. So
speaking of that, I just remembered one of the last times you and I rode, which was a little while ago. Remember that older guy on the Specialized on the e-bike just was like blitzing uphill with his head down, like right around. I mean, we almost decked each other because he was just, and he wasn't. I mean, he was going way faster than he would ever normally be able to go up the hill, but he was also just blatantly not looking forward. He was looking down. But it was funny. And we didn't hit each other, but I mean, that was almost a collision, and that was very much e-bike related.
Yeah. So there's that to it as well, but it'll all get figured out. Europe has it figured out, so Americans will come around.
Yeah, it's at some point. So I don't know, but if any of you want to, feel the spice on the e-bike debate or have an opinion either way, it's also just entertaining to go. I don't understand why people get so heated about things that are not that meaningful in the grand scheme of life, but that's just my personal philosophy. But going to somewhere like Pink Bike and reading people banter back and forth about e-bike hate is can be comical, but also just like hard to understand, wrap your head around.
To me, an e-bike's a great tool. It's not going to replace my normal bike, but it's cool to explore. It's cool to get more laps in at certain places. Yeah. It also, another cool thing is like I could go out on a regular bike and my dad could go out on an e-bike. Yeah. And we can go cruise
we
together.
have staff that ride with their fathers in that same situation that are really happy about that.
Exactly. So it gets more people on bikes, and at the end of the day, that's all better for the mountain bike community, no matter who it is, but on a bike's better.
Yeah. But is it if they're fighting with each other?
It'll pass over.
Yeah. Anyway, so hopefully that was brought some insight on what's going on with e-bikes to everyone listening. And yeah, why don't we just jump right into talking about quick 101. If you're more into podcasts than you are YouTube videos, we produce a ton of YouTube videos, and we'll give you the quick synopsis 101 on some of our recent ones that we did since the last podcast that we recorded. One of which was rear shock upgrades. So it was basically an entire guide of how to upgrade your rear shock, where we talked about all the various things you need to know, like eye-to-eye and stroke and mounting hardware and weird fitment issues, which is very much a real thing. We even dove a little bit into some complexities around suspension curves, right? Being linear versus progressive, and a coil versus air, and how sometimes it doesn't work. You run into many problems with that these days. I think it's slightly getting less complicated, but it also depends on your bike.
Yeah, it definitely is still there. It's not quite as apparent. Also with coils getting better and better tunes, as well as bikes kind of like being designed with a coil in mind almost.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of brands have started making their longer travel bikes and noted like, hey, this is designed to work well with a coil or air shock, which I don't think they had that on their mind a few years ago. But once coil shocks started gaining more traction, they started thinking about that.
That's a good pun. Coil
like
shocks
that?
with more traction.
Springing into traction.
Yeah, so we covered everything on kind of what to look for, how to measure your bike, and what you might want to upgrade, as well as also a little bit of insight on like overstroking and when you should or shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And then coil versus air, whether that's a linear suspension design or non-linear.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think we went into that video with the goal of trying to cover as much as possible without making 5-part documentary on the whole topic, because the end all be all takeaway when it comes to upgrading your rear shock is that it's unfortunately kind of complex. It's just not simple. There's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of like weird compatibility and sizing things, and then there's like various other things of why you'd want to upgrade, what it's going to do, does it matter? There's a lot, but we tried to cover all of it in that video. And I think the moral of the story is if you are desiring or craving a rear shock upgrade, it can be an awesome change to your bike. Like it can really breathe life into your bike in a very different way than you'd imagine. But tread lightly, do your research, watch our video, watch other videos, talk to people, just educate yourself before you spend, $300 to $1,300 on a rear shock. It's an expensive purchase, so it's one to really dig into. The other one we did was just a little product announcement about RockShox's new fork, the Domain, which you spent plenty of time riding that thing, right? So what is it?
Yeah, the Domain is the more entry-level version of the RockShox Zeb, which came out last year. So it kind of is on a similar chassis, a little bit less refined, but still 38 mil uppers, and is just meant for that, 160, 170, 180 mil fork. I think the Domain will be spec'd on a lot of OE bikes more than it is an aftermarket fork. But it is a cool option.
It's a long travel, heavy duty enduro fork. I've been kind of calling it a super enduro fork.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So
because like 160 to 180 single crown fork with 38 mil stanchions, I don't know, something about that to me is like that's super or ultra or extra. Like
it is.
It's a lot.
It's meant for some heavy duty riding. It has a motion control damper, air spring. It's I forgot what it retailed for, $499 or $550.
$500, something around there.
Something around there, $550 or $499. So for the price, it is a pretty darn good fork.
Yeah,
you get a lot of performance packed into that. It is also upgradable damper wise, so you could stick the same damper in a Domain down the road. That comes in a Charger,
That's cool.
or that comes in a Zeb.
Yeah.
So it'd be the Charger 2.1 damper that comes in a Zeb. So could get a nice fork and then down the road upgrade it to where it's almost a Zeb.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So, I mean, some of the trade-offs are obviously going to be weight, right? I mean, anything in the mountain bike world, when you go sort of down in price point, you go up in weight and down in features. Sometimes those features may or may not be useful to you. Sometimes they are. But yeah, when you compare Domain to Zeb, obviously Domain is heavier and it lacks a little bit of features there. But it's also about half the price. And if you're looking for that long travel, 38 mil stanchion, beefy, super enduro fork that has amazing performance and no flex, yeah, the Domain is kind of dialed for that.
Speaking of forks,
Fox 2022.
2022.
Yeah, I'm so confused on all the different brands and how they release product like a year in advance when it's just confusing.
Yeah.
I think Fox announces stuff in spring of 21. That's 2022 model year.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
so that's what they did.
So that's where we're at. Besides the model year, they dropped a new fork. So the new Fox 34 is new in both the...
Is it new or just like heavily revised? Because it's still a 34, same model name.
Yes, but it's pretty like...
It's quite a bit different.
It's quite a bit different. It's pretty ground up, redesigned, I'd say. I'd say this is a new Fox 34, only because they changed the lowers, changed the uppers on a step cast. It's much more narrower stance. They got the weight down a lot on the 34 step cast, where it's actually lighter than a RockShox SID, which was previously the lightest.
Coming in hot.
Yeah, 120 dedicated.
Shots fired.
Downcountry XC plus, whatever you'd want to call it, category fork. More than XC, not quite middle trail bike fork. As well as they redid the normal 34, which is, again, lighter, stiffer as they claim.
Yeah, better damper. And this was all kind of predictable, right? Because if you look at the 40, the 38, the 36, they all had that new front arch, that like rounded arch, and that like new lower leg design in general, and a few in like the crowns. Like it was all kind of predictable that like, okay, all these are doing that. Like obviously the 34 is coming next, and now it is here. So if that's the fork you've been after, the latest and greatest one just came out, and it probably won't change for at least a few years now.
Yep.
Yeah, those look sweet. I mean, I'm definitely curious. I've been riding the RockShox stuff on my Revel Ranger, basically the SID setup with the SID fork and shock, and I love it. I mean, it's a 115 mil travel bike in the back, 120 in the front. I haven't ridden that like travel range of bike with Fox suspension in a while, because I kind of felt like RockShox was just a little ahead of the game there, but now I think Fox is right there, and maybe better, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I've been on
At least on par.
SID stuff for a little over a year now, since before it came out. And then previous, though, I was on an SP100 with Fox front and rear. That it worked really well. You know, I didn't have any complaints about it at that point. So if they made it lighter and it works just as well or better, you know.
Yeah, for context, Yeti SP100, 120 in the front.
Yeah,
and
it was
100
120 in the front,
back.
100 in the rear, yeah.
Yeah.
So Fox also, with the new forks of the 2022 line, has two new rear shocks. The Float X, which is kind of bringing back a shock that disappeared a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's replacing the DPX2, which is their trail bike shock, kind of middle of the line shock.
So the DPX2 is no longer?
DPX2 is no longer for MY22.
Gotcha.
And then...
Dude, that new Float X looks rad. Like just the placement of the rebound and compression knobs, and like it just looks really good.
Yeah, it does
Fox
look really
is good at making stuff look fancy and high tech and quality.
Yeah, it looks really sharp. And also the video with our buddy Elliot Jackson ripping the new 34 and Float X shock was really awesome. So you should go watch that, because Elliot is pretty stylish and
Just
fun to watch on a bike.
incredible rider to watch. Yeah.
And then also another kind of shock that they brought back in the lineup was the DHX. So
Full-blown coil.
Full-blown coil. I couldn't say that. And it's pretty much a less adjustable version of the DHX2, which is their top-of-the-line coil.
Yeah. So a little bit more affordable coil shock.
Yeah.
That, still has got all the fancy things from Fox on it.
Yep, which is also kind of geared at that heavy trail and Duro market, not quite the DH shock. It's kind of more for that, you know, someone who wants a coil but doesn't necessarily want all this bulk and adjustment of the DHX2.
Yep, that makes sense. So yeah, some new products, slowly but surely coming in this year, which is cool. I guess the only other YouTube video that's been pretty cool that we spent a lot of work on, was BERD spokes, BERD. We've talked about them on the podcast before because we've been like testing them and playing with them, and it's just a really interesting, unusual product. It's a spoke that floats on water. It's just not a steel spoke. It's not an aluminum spoke. Do you remember the name of it? I totally forgot.
I'm gonna butcher it. It's a polyurethane spoke, pretty much made out of a high-tech material.
They got an acronym. Acronym.
I couldn't even say that.
It's BERD spokes are made from an advanced polymer called ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, or for short, UHMWPE. Like that's an easier
Yeah, it rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, so in the video, we kind of went in depth on everything about those spokes. I mean, they're unbelievably lighter than your traditional spoke. Unbelievably. Like, what, 3 times, like 300% lighter per wheel or something? Like, shaves roughly like a quarter pound per wheel.
Yes.
Right?
It depends on what spoke it's spec'd with, but anywhere from 100 to 200 grams per wheel.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a lot
quarter
lighter
pound,
than a traditional
almost
spoke.
up to half a pound off a traditional spoke.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think they're really awesome for the same kind of market we were just talking about with the step cast and, smaller travel bikes.
That light trail bike or just trail bike, and then definitely for XC bikes.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. If you're looking for the lightest, best performing wheel setup, absolutely look into BERD. There is a couple caveats, of course. You gotta pay for this. They're not cheaper than steel spokes, that's for sure. We talk about that in the video, and then some of the technology behind the things. And then we tested them. All three of us, myself, Liam, and Jared, all rode those things, and we're quite impressed. BERD sells the spokes individually. They sell complete wheels with their own rims. Yeah, they're wild. It's just a weird thing to look at. I mean, one of the caveats too is the lacing process. Have you built them yet? Those
I'm
wheels?
currently in the process of building some for a buddy of mine.
Yeah,
and
that's on a J-bend hub that you're building those with.
Yeah,
and so you have to use like this little tool to like kind of gouge out the flange of the actual hub shell.
Yeah, so essentially you have to basically open up the curve of where the spoke's gonna come out of the hub shell. So use basically a cutting bit on all the spokes, both sides. So it's 32 hole, 64 times per hub on a cutting bit. Then you use a grinding bit. Then you use a polishing bit. So then once you're done with the hub, then you start lacing them, and that also involves some other basically building tools that you have to pull the spokes through. It's quite a little process to do it. Then you have to put the little bar in that holds the spoke there.
BERD has their own little YouTube video showing you that.
And
not that many people would ever really want to do that, but it's also kind of just cool to watch it be assembled.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to build them as well, just to see what I'm up to, and if by chance we want to do it at Worldwide.
Yeah.
I think once you get it down, it's definitely still going to be about twice as long as a normal wheel building process. I'm pretty fast at this point. I can build lace, true, and tensional wheel about 45 minutes. I think this is going to take me an hour and a half once I get it down.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a significant
it's
time
intensive,
difference.
But you can save 100 to 200 grams per wheel. And if that's important to you, then what's an extra 2-3 hours of your time to save a lot of weight and rotating weight?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was the other thing that I noticed right away was, I mean, it's rotational weight. So that means when you're actually pedaling and spinning up, that's the most important weight to sort of shave off your bike that gives you this notable acceleration and feeling difference. And that's not just weight's just not the only claim BERD makes. The other part is all about, damping and just that like more, it's just a different feel, right? It's like instead of the vibration and everything running through a steel spoke, it just doesn't do that. It's kind of like the difference between carbon and aluminum bars a little bit, or carbon and aluminum frames. Like there's just different vibration feeling to the whole thing. That to me was a little harder to like wrap my head around on. It was one of those things that I'm like, I definitely think I feel it, but I don't, it's just hard to like things like that are a little bit more, I think I felt it, but was that just my head thinking that? I mean, I think I felt it. I think those wheels performed and felt amazing. But it's that one's a little more like, to me, it was also just like, well, I can immediately tell how much lighter they are. Like you pedal to 2 pedal strokes, and you're like, whoa. So that's noticeable. The damping part, I think, is noticeable, but yeah,
it's also hard with we were testing with 2.4 tires on a bike with suspension. On something that's not necessarily consistently rough terrain.
Yeah, like a rigid XC bike or gravel bike. Yeah, that would be really cool to test these back to back, because that's when you can really you ride a gravel bike on some rough terrain and it rattles your brain. That's where any advantage you can get when it comes to damping vibration helps.
Especially a consistent washboarded out fire road.
Yep. Oh yeah.
With a gravel bike or even a hardtail. It's hard to pedal over that stuff in general. So you get some vibration dampening, you get some comfort. I think that's where you could feel it. For me, the weight is just insane on the BERD spokes, and I'm a total fan.
Yeah, me too. I mean, and this is funny because how did this all transpire? We saw BERD like just on Instagram or something,
and on our Instagram post because we were doing some weight weenie stuff to your bike.
Yeah, that's right. And then we're like, whoa, look at I think you sent it to me on Instagram. You're like, oh, look at these things, and I was like, whoa, we should reach out to them and see if we can test them. And then they sent us a set of wheels. We started testing them, and I was like, dude, we should sell these. These are good. These are really good. And then it was like, we should make a video about these. These are interesting. And yeah, now that's how that all transpired, which is pretty cool. I mean, I think the other thing too, like, yes, they are more expensive, but you can buy complete wheel sets that come with a good carbon rim, and that's basically like comparably priced to any other carbon wheel set. And it just happens to have these like astronomically lighter spokes on there. So definitely important stuff.
Carbon wheels are good value, as well as you don't have to lace them yourself.
So you eliminate the lacing just process. Buy the complete wheels if
they're
you're really
competitively priced, and they come with Industry 9 Hydra hubs. So if you're looking into them, they make for mountain bikes, they make an XC22, an XC25, and a TR27. So those are all those numbers are related to the internal rim width. So we tested the TR27s, which is a really great trail wheel and diameter. Yeah,
it's the same thing I'm running on my bike now, just the Industry 9 Trail 270s, right? Yeah. It's the same internal width rim. Which makes sense for like 2.4 and below tires.
Yeah, so that, and I'd be pretty curious to throw on some XC25s just to really get that weight down and roll it on 2.3 tire on my XC bike and just see how fast those things are. So if you're listening, BERD.
Yeah. Can we have some more wheels, please?
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Do you poop a lot? Do you ride bikes a lot? Do you have to poop while riding bikes a lot? If you answered yes to 2 of these questions, then JRAS reusable toilet paper is for you. Our state-of-the-art steel wool-infused toilet paper will leave you feeling clean and refreshed. Stock up now at jrasreusabletoiletpaper.org.
And now, back to the show.
Listener questions. We've got 5 of them, and we're going to blitz through them. Number 1. Actually, so we posted on our Worldwide Cyclery Instagram account a little story asking you guys for questions. You can also send them in to podcast@worldwidecyclery.com or whatever. But anyways, a lot of people asked some variation of, is 27.5 dying? What do you think, Willie?
Was it alive?
Oh.
That was a joke.
Wise ass.
I don't think it's dying. I think it's found its spot in the market as well as 29er has.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely found its spot in that kind of jumping, jibbing, having fun section of bikes. And I think
it just has a different feel. It's a different type of bike.
And I think 29er's been proven to kind of be, at least up front, mullet setup, whatever, but is to be a faster bike with more traction. So
but I guess the question though is like 27.5 will die if people just continuously don't purchase that, like the bikes that are 27.5 or the tires that are like, if everyone just somehow goes to a 29, like then brands will just stop making it. I mean, same thing with 26. Like Maxxis doesn't make a lot of their popular good mountain bike tires on 26 inch anymore because like there's not 26 inch mountain bikes.
And part of that was from brands just not making 26 bikes anymore.
Yeah.
So they stopped
like
producing
all
tires.
Connects to each other one way or another.
It's a full
like
circle.
A bike brand stops making it because people aren't buying it. Then another one does it. Then the tire brands stop making the tires. The rims stop being produced. So
if this is any indication, I think they're both Fox 38s and RockShox Zeb forks in stock on our website that are for 27.5, and 29ers are 3 to 10 months out lead time.
Yeah.
So maybe that's an indication of where 27.5's at as well.
Yeah, it is tough to say. I mean, right now, I don't think it's dying anytime soon. But
No.
I could see it being like the headphone jack on cell phones. Like, slowly but surely, somebody's just like, you know what? We don't need the headphone jack. And then Apple's like, boom, no headphone jack. And then it's like, oh, dude, Apple, like, what if, let's theorize, what if next year, Trek and Specialized, two of the biggest brands, just don't make any 27.5 bikes at all? Like, it's just like, nope. What would happen?
Yeah.
A lot of other brands would
I know-
follow suit.
I know Trek
They would
has
probably
one,
just
but
be like, dude, if they didn't do it, we're not doing it.
I almost want to look and see if Specialized even has any 27.5 bikes
for
right
the
now.
longest time they didn't. Yeah.
But then they did. But now the newest models, I think, might all be 2.9.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
it'd be interesting.
It will. Okay, next question. Internal cable noise, is it normal?
Is it normal?
Well, here's my thought on that. There's some frames don't have tubes.
Yeah, so if
right?
it's not
And some-
tube and tube,
Yeah, so some frames have tubes, little like gas lines basically that
Yeah.
connect the two holes into the frame, and then boom, it gets rid of the internal cable noise entirely.
sometimes.
You're right. There is on the odd case that even those tubes still can make noise.
Correct.
But if your frame doesn't have those tubes, you're getting a lot of noise, no matter
Yeah.
what. End of story. There's ways you can go around it, though. I personally cannot stand any of that. And before a lot of the bikes I rode had those tubes in there, I was getting all that noise. And Liam well knows, because he's the one who works on my bikes most of the time, we were like stuffing foam. Like, you'd pull the bottom bracket out and like jam foam up into the down tube, and then do the same thing through the top of the down tube through the head tube. And yeah, I mean, that noise is normal, but you can stop it with foam. But
Yeah.
it's a hassle,
And
it's
There's
a
also
mess.
some foam tubes. I think you can probably get them at like Home Depot in the electrical
Mm-hmm.
section that you could actually basically route your cables through and stuff that into your tubes as well if you have basically an open internal cable routing frame.
Yep.
There are some tube and tube bikes that make some noise. You could try wrapping pull the cable out, wrap a little bit of electrical tape around that, stuff it back in so it kind of holds its spot in that tube, as well as sometimes a little rubber grommet at the top will just help it from rattling around.
Yeah, help it from like sliding up and down and making that noise.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, it is kind of normal. But
Yeah.
it's less common now that more bikes are running those little tubes inside of the
Yeah.
actual frame tubes. But it is fixable with those little tactics. Next question. Should heavy riders ride longer travel bikes?
Broad answer, no. I don't think they should ride longer travel bikes. I think if you're a heavier rider, you might not want to ride a lightweight XC bike because it's just going to not be designed for you. I think there's some bikes that are shorter travel yet designed for abuse and riding really hard, which will also translate to a heavier rider having a good ride on a shorter travel bike. Something like the Evil following.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. I'm trying to. It's a touchy question. I mean, part of me is like, I don't really care how big you are. Buy a bike that makes the most sense for what you ride the most often. But you're right. There's like different bikes for different things, and yeah, I mean, if you're trying to be all weight weenie and ride an XC bike, and you're a 220 pound plus rider, you'll probably notice more flex.
Yeah,
And
that's
just
what I
lack
mean.
of durability. Yeah. Which then might lead you to be like, well, I'd have more fun and a better ride and better durability on a more stout bike that's kind of just like even made for gnarlier riding. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, no, I mean, it's not like, if you're heavy, ride a longer travel bike. But yeah, get what suits your preferences. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're a larger rider and you're concerned about, I don't know, just like general durability or flex or whatever, then yeah, get a more stout
Yeah.
bike of a kind. That doesn't mean that like, yeah, I don't know.
Can't ride a short travel bike.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like
It
you
doesn't mean
just
that
need
at
the
all.
right tool for the job.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
and for your preference.
And for your preference, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. When will companies restock? So I mean, everyone kind of knows this this whole shenanigans that's going on now. Last year in 2020 when the pandemic hit, basically all of the factories that make anything bike related shut down for about 3 months, and then they all came back to some crazy demand because the whole world decided they wanted to ride bikes of all kinds and buy bikes of all kinds and all the parts of all kinds, and every factory, it's hard goods. So every brand is well aware there is really, really high consumer demand for everything they make in the bicycle industry at large, and of course when there's heightened demand, they want to make product and have product to sell so they can, put food on the table. Not as easy as it might seem because there's only so many factories that make everything. And again, it's hard goods. You can't just make it out of thin air. You need machines and raw materials, and things need to be shipped around, and there's a lot of shenanigans going on. I think maybe a question would be like, when will stock levels of various things normalize and just kind of be like they were in 2019 and before? That's plausible in the summertime of 2022, but probably maybe fall of 2022, and on the pessimistic side, maybe 2023, to be honest, from like what I understand in the industry right now.
Yeah, it's not necessarily looking great currently. Yeah. It's just they just can't keep up, the factories, with how much demand there is. So
there's just so many demands on such sort of, I don't know, you could say such a limited number of actual physical factories making these products. And then there's all these other logistical challenges involved, like the raw materials and the supply chain. And it is a bummer. I mean, even for us at Worldwide as a retailer, we have so much less available inventory this year at the same time as we did last year, and you can imagine that directly translates to our sales, and it's just tough to like secure product to sell and have product to sell, and like nobody wants to be out of stock.
Yeah.
So everyone, including retailers and brands, are just like scrambling to get more product.
Yeah. I could tell you every brand I talk to is actively working on getting more product as soon as they can. Yeah. Stemming from CEOs who don't do this, or owners who don't normally go in the supply chain era or arena, are currently trying to tackle this problem. So it's at the top of their list.
Yeah, absolutely. It sure is. It'll be solved one day. One day, not very soon though, but one day. Best mountain bike seat. We actually made an entire YouTube video on mountain bike saddles, and I'm pretty proud of it. I think that was a pretty thorough video. We covered a lot of the common saddles from like the most popular brands like Ergon and WTB, and we covered some like other like less common brands for saddles, and then we also broke it down into like how much does it matter depending on how much you ride, right? I mean, if you only ride, 1 hour stints or less a couple times a week, you're probably not super concerned with the saddle, unless you have a lot of sensitive areas. If you ride like 10 plus hours a week, it's a big deal. Like you used to ride a lot of road and XC, and like saddles mattered a lot to you. And
yeah, definitely. Back when I was, riding a lot, an average week was 12, 13, 14 hours. Saddle, I went through a couple saddles before I found what I liked, and everyone's different. I personally liked no relief or no cutout on my saddle. It actually gave me more pressure points than it didn't, and that's me personally. Other people cannot ride a saddle without a relief or a cutout.
Yeah, that's the funny thing about like best mountain bike seat. It's like, well, there's not a best mountain bike anything, especially seats. That's like the last thing that'd be a best
so
of.
personal and preference, and even
unless everyone had the same shaped buttocks and areas things down there. Yeah, there's no best seat.
I think it depends on how much you ride, the style of riding you do. XC, you're in the saddle way more. You're seated longer. Enduro riding, you're not usually in the saddle that much, and if you are, it's just to get to the top to ride downhill. Yep. So I think that matters. I think how often you ride matters, and also whether you're a chamois-less or chamois rider also matters as well. So personal preference, check out our YouTube video.
Yeah, we actually, so we started that video with, like, we try to do all these videos, try and keep it high level and easy to digest and understand and demystify the topic as simply and concisely as we can. And then as we get further into the video, we get more intricate, go down the rabbit hole even more. And we actually brought into that video Jonathan Lee, who's the former, one of the co-hosts of this MTB podcast. He used to run this thing. He's an amazing resource when it comes to bike knowledge, and we use him all the time because of everyone, we know that are friends of ours. Like, the dude just puts in the most amount of miles, and he rides a lot of road too, which is kind of uncommon. Like, usually people are just mountain bikers or road riders, and Jonathan does a lot of both. So we had him give a whole spiel and explanation on, like, if you actually ride like 10 plus 20 plus hours a week, like how you should analyze like what saddle you need, what's really important, how you can test them. And so if you really are riding a lot, or you have sensitivity and you're having trouble finding one that's comfortable, he really breaks it down in that sense, because it's not as common for mountain bikers. Road, it's like super common. You're sitting in that thing for hours. It is. No matter what you're doing, it's hard on road. But mountain biking is less common for people to really be nitpicky on seats.
Yeah, I think when I worked at a road shop, our saddle demo program was probably one of the most common things I did.
It was just coming in and swapping out saddles.
Swapping out saddles, trying to find the right one.
And we've never had a saddle demo program in 10 years of Worldwide Cyclery as a mountain bike shop.
It just depends on your needs. So
Well, there you go. There's your answer. And that concludes episode 82 of the Mountain Bike Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. I learned how to say that from listening to the Wall Street Journal podcast each morning. And I don't know, any last words, Liam?
Keep riding bikes.
Keep having fun.
Keep having fun.
We love you. Bye.
Peace.
Play a sound effect, DJ Pineapple.
Ba-ba-ba-ba.